All right, I think we are live. So my name is Andrew Pena,
Mine's Carissa Weeks.
My name is Mackenzie Hansen.
and I will go first, and I'll just answer some of these questions about the interview that I did. So for my interview, me and my wife interviewed her boss. She's doing her internship, and so I just sat in on that interview with them, and kind of went through the same questions and just kind of observed and listened. So briefly share some points of the interview. Don't disclose the names, but talk about who you talked to. Let's see, their children and about what about them. So during the interview, we talked about that she has three kids. She has all boys, 11, 7, and 6 years old. And the first one, the oldest one, has the untreated ADHD. They found that out when she was about I think a little in about I think if I can remember about 2 or 3 years old. She kind of remember she found out that he had ADHD. They don't do anything to treat it. One of her teachers had kind of suggested that he had ADHD, and so for her, she was like, she wasn't really surprised about it. She's kind of, in a sense, suspected it. She always felt like when he was younger, he kind of had a hard time paying attention, doing things, certain tasks. He was always, doing different things, always kind of off the walls a little bit. And so that she kind of mentioned that. So with that, for him particularly, she just has he just I guess one of the things that she said is she kind of noticed that he struggles with socially inappropriate things, not to know when to do things or when he shouldn't do things. And but other as far as his development, like she felt like it was pretty normal, as far as when he was a toddler, walking, crawling, talking, everything else was fairly normal. Um, that she had kind of observed. Her next son is 7 years old. She felt like he had really slow in development compared to her first child. She said he didn't walk or crawl until later, and let's see, she didn't seem too worried about it. And then I guess when she was older, she kind of noticed that he kind of had like a wandering eye a little bit, and so she went and got it checked out, and then she had kind of felt like after that she had noticed a lot more improvement with it. So not so much that. So she had kind of said that because of that, she felt like maybe he was just a little slow socially or emotionally behind, because I guess what her thoughts were on it was he wasn't very good at reading emotions. I guess reading them. I've never had, I guess, a wandering eye or anything, but being able to impair your vision, not being able to see or be able to understand people's body language and things like that. She was, it kind of felt like he had been, developmentally behind a little bit, um, from not being able to read people's emotions and stuff like that. So that was with her second son, and then she had kind of hoped that after over time that he'd kind of start to be, I guess, becoming a little bit more used to being able to express his emotions and to be able to read others' emotions. So let's see, the last son, he was. She kind of mentioned that he has some low self-esteem due to his weight, and hope that he would kind of grow out of it. When he was younger, he developed kind of very similar to her first son. She said she felt like he was a little more socially, um, doesn't have a whole lot of friends, doesn't communicate with a whole lot of friends, and tends to support or hang out with the more less fortunate kids at school. Is what she had said, what she had mentioned. So he receives I guess what it's called is an independent educational program, Title One support services, just because he had lower test scores, and so as they do that, so that's why he has the Title I support because of lower test scores. And then I guess on the first son, I forgot to mention, um, he has just a like a what do they call it, an independent education program. So he just has because he has ADHD, he has someone that kind of just follows him around just to make sure that he's on track, keeping him on track, and doing schoolwork and stuff like that. So other than that, her 3 kids and talking with her. Let's see. After doing this interview, what is it your sense of normal, or what does normal mean? I think from this week's learning materials and kind of the interview and everything, to me it's interesting to think. There isn't. I think we get into a state where we want to think like, well, my child's normal, or I'm normal, or this person's not normal because they're not like me. And I think we do that because we're naturally, as people, I think we judge people and we want to be normal, and this person's not normal because they're different. But after the kind of this week's learning, I kind of thought that it was interesting that, and the last few weeks in my I have a calling, and it's a little different in our ward, but I'm in nursery, and so I have a chance. I look at all these kids that are 18 months to about 2, 3 years old, and it's so interesting how they develop differently. My son's almost 4 years old, and he talks pretty good. But today I was talking to a little girl who's 2 years old, and she can fully express herself in sentences, and kind of puts things together a lot better than my 4 year old son. And so I don't feel like there's anything wrong with any of my kids, and socially or whatever developmentally wrong with them. And I just think that that's what's interesting is there's really, in a sense, there's no normal. Every child will develop differently. Every child has different experiences, different, I guess you could say, parents or backgrounds. However they're raised, it affects their development, and it's not necessarily worse or um, better or worse than another. It's just it's, to me, the whole purpose of these assignments was to desensitize the idea of normal, and I think that had put it into my mind, especially with my calling, that I kind of was able to take a look at it a little in more depth. So that was kind of interesting to me. Let's see. Did you find that the parents were often the last to know if there was a delay or problem with their child? No. From talking with her, she had mentioned that with her first child, she had noticed that stuff before, even though after her teacher kind of mentioned that he might have ADHD, she wasn't surprised. I think the parents in her case were, um, she was kind of aware of it, at least. Not necessarily like she was. I think my child has ADHD, but okay, I think you're just a little bit more active, and you lose track of things a little bit easier. So I think that for her case, yes, she was the first one to know. Did you get any sense that the parents were uncomfortable or had a sense of denial, shame, embarrassment related to their child's special needs? Um, I guess with her, she doesn't really have any child that has special needs. One's ADHD and the other one just has a Title I support for low test scores, but I don't think she had any shame or embarrassment for it. Just it wasn't anything really extreme. I don't think she really considers her children as special needs or anything. So I think, yeah, she doesn't have any shame or embarrassment. I think it was just something that she knew. Any of the developmental problems or things that were coming about with her kids, she kind of recognized and knew. Kind of similar, I guess, for my kids as I see other kids. I don't think that something's wrong with my son just because one other kid speaks at 2 years old, and I've seen many other kids, speak at a younger age, and I think they're just fine. He's communicates with other kids, and he he's socially interacts with kids normally. I feel so. I think they just all do it differently. So I guess that was kind of my interview. and it went good. It was good for me, and it was interesting. So, questions or comments, or shall we kind of wait and towards the end?
Yeah, I can go.
Go ahead.
Can I answer the questions? So for the first one, well, I interviewed my sister-in-law, and they have two kids, a 4-year-old boy and a 2-year-old daughter, and they neither of them really have like any disabilities, but I was just like the person that I went to, and um, let's see, but they were specifically, let's see, um, her son, first of all, like he just has like some, what is it called? Like issues, and so they kind of realized that he likes different things, like he gets like really wired up, and then he just needs something to like calm him down, like so like weights and stuff like that. And then but with her daughter, she was like really slow at starting to talk, and so she kind of got on the ball on that really fast. But like with her first son, like with your first child, like everyone's always like so particular about everything, and you want everything to be perfect. But she she like kind of caught it early on, and she enrolled him, or I don't know how it all works, but in like the let's see what it's called, in like the infant toddler intervention program. So I'm not really sure like all the details, but they just like, I know that they had like people come over to their house and like just like work with their kids, and so she is like she really like supports that and thinks that it's really good. And so then with the second, she, because like she was kind of aware of that and had that background, she kind of realized that something was um, holding her back, and she wasn't talking as like on the average level that most kids do. And so she also got in the home toddler intervention with her, and that like really helped. And she taught them both like sign language at the beginning when they were learning to talk, and she kind of did it with the first just because like it was her first kid and she wanted to give him the best experience. But then the second, she realized like that it could really help her and be able to like really start that her speaking and everything. Um, so for the second one, I don't know, like just like Andrew was saying, the sense of normal. There isn't really a normal, because like everyone is does like has their own time frame and everything. But I think that kind of in my mind, just like the average, like what most kids would do, like that would be kind of the normal. So if they don't talk as soon as they should or something like that, I mean, like there's probably not necessarily something wrong, but they might just be like a little bit lower. Um, and they'll like eventually learn how to and stuff. But I think the normal for me would just be like average. And then um, like I said, she was kind of, for this third question, did you find that the parents were often the last to know? She was actually like really on top of it, and she was able to help her second child like start talking because of her background, and she like was very aware. And so I thought like that was really important that we do like get a background and have a background knowledge of different things, just so we can intervene when we need to. And um, she was like very receptive to letting other people come in and like help out. And they had, like I said, they had someone come into their home and like just do like little simple activities, but overall they really helped, and had a speech therapist and just like different things like that. And then for the third question, or I mean the fourth question, did you get a sense that the parents were uncomfortable? And I kind of asked like if they had ever had any interaction with disabled children, and she said that her son does have a couple friends I can't remember. I think they were autistic, and she just said that they like it was hard for him because he was like higher and he could have conversations and everything with people, but like where his friend like was a little bit slower to learn to speak and stuff, like he would still play with him and he would still try to like teach him stuff, but like he would get a little bit frustrated, and but he like overall wasn't like she's not against him hanging out with them just because they are a little bit slower. It doesn't matter. But she said like the only thing that would kind of um stop her from like having them like hang out or whatever would be like if their bad behavior was like wearing off on her son, which makes sense. But she was like overall like she doesn't look down on like different um disabilities. And she said like just because of her background of being like with the toddler infant program, she's like really like an advocate for that. And her sister has like a son that has been like slower to speak and like just like different things like that, and she's been able to help her get her son into that program just so that she can help them. So she's like very vocal about it and just really wants to help other people um, make sure that like their children have the best environment and get the help that they need. And I think that's pretty much all that I have for my interview.
Sounds good. Mackenzie, are you ready to go?
Yes, I'll go. So the family that I was able to interview was, they have been married, I think, for almost 10 or 11 years, I think. And I've known them for quite some time. Actually, me and my husband have both known them for a while. And they have 4 kids. The oldest is like 9, I think, and then one's 7, and then 6, and then one's 4. And the first 2 don't really have any special needs or anything, but um, the last 2 are both autistic. They both have autism. So I was able to interview them and talk to them, and they told me that first they didn't really notice. It wasn't something, I guess, I mean, I think you're born with autism, but they didn't necessarily notice it until they were probably about 1 or 2. No, probably 1. I think other people probably saw the signs, but they probably, once they started walking and talking, they noticed that it was definitely different from the first 2 that they've had. Um, the good thing with them is since they did have their first 2 that didn't have any special needs, they knew what to expect with a child. And so since that wasn't happening with the last 2, they kind of saw the signs. They saw the signs of, different speech and inappropriate kind of social interactions once they got older, and then, poor eye contact, just different, signs of autism, and just speech delay and learning disabilities and everything like that. They did tell me that they do have more of a slight autism. It's not as severe as some cases, but you still can tell. I think. What else did we talk about? They said. I'm trying to think. When they said we noticed a big difference from when they first started walking, because we did have the first 2 children, like I said. They also said it was a little bit harder for them to walk, and they were more wobblier, and it took a longer time for them to walk by themselves. They said that the talking was a big difference. They said they had a big talking delay, speech delay. Once they got older, they didn't ever really make eye contact, just different things like that. Their social interaction was a little bit different. They also said they didn't have a lot of interest in things. So I know that's one of like a sign is they don't have a lot of interest in a lot of things, and they have more of a problem paying attention. So those were kind of like, I mean, it was pretty big for them. They had a hard time with it just because the first 2 were not, they didn't have any special needs, but these next 2 they had to deal with, not a severe case of autism, but they did have to deal with the autism. They said it was really nice because they felt that it was a major blessing that they had the first 2 children, because they were able to help them a lot because I mean they were in more of a lower income family and didn't have a ton of money, and I know having kids with special needs, it kind of takes a lot of money and different speech therapists and different things, or to put them in a program it costs money, and so it was hard for them, but they were able to get through, and the older two kids were able to help them a lot. So for the second question, after doing this interview, what is your sense of normal? Um, I don't know, that's a hard question just because, when you think normal, you think just like Carissa said, just like kind of average, and they, have this sense of they talk at a certain age and they walk at a certain age. Obviously, everyone's kind of different, but they have, most people walk and talk by 3, so I think um, when they don't do that, that's where people think it's not normal. So I don't know. I think just average, like Carissa said. So the third question: did you find that the parents were often the last to know if there was a delay or a problem with their child? Um, I don't think necessarily they were the last to know. I think that they saw the signs. I'm guessing other people who are more aware of autism probably saw the signs sooner than they did, since they have never had to deal with, special needs. So I think that there were other people who probably saw the signs first. Um, they did tell me like once they started seeing the signs, they went to the doctor right away and had them tested. So I guess they weren't the last to know. How did they come to that awareness? Like I just said, they came into it by going to the doctor. They just, saw the signs and saw that they weren't developing as much as their other two kids, so they took them to a doctor. Um, did you get a sense of whether or not parents were receptive to receiving services? I think they were really good about wanting them to get better. I think they really wanted them to be as normal as possible. They didn't want them to be different from anyone, so I think that I think they put him in a speech therapist and they took him to some sort of program. I can't remember what they said. I don't think they were necessarily against that. So for the last question, did you get a sense that the parents were uncomfortable or had a sense of denial, shame, embarrassment related to their child's special needs? No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't get that at all. I think they were very open to talking with me about it, so I think that they weren't necessarily uncomfortable. I think like anyone, I think it is hard for someone. I mean, it special needs kids they're amazing. They have like this special light about them and heart about them, but I mean, they are hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of patience. I think it takes more patience with just regular kids, who don't have special needs. But I think it takes even more patience with someone who does have special needs because they do, develop differently and they have delays and different things. So I think that's more of it's just stressful. I don't think they were, in denial or shame or embarrassment. I think it was just they were stressed out more than anything. Um, did they feel a sense of resolution or acceptance and had a long-term plan for dealing with their special or with their child needs? Um, I didn't really talk about them having like a long-term plan. I think they definitely were wanting them to be as normal as possible and be in a school. Because I know some people don't put their kids who have special needs in school, but they wanted to. They wanted to be in that school and feel that environment. I know that they obviously would be in a different classroom, just like any elementary or high school, they have that different classroom. Um, I don't know about long term. I don't know, like, after high school, I don't know when they get older. I know a lot of people send them to a care facility. I didn't ask them that. I don't know what they want to do about that, but I think they definitely want them to live, as normal as we say, as possible. But, I learned a lot from them. They were a good family, and I think they have learned a lot through, having these kids, and I think they grew a ton because I knew them before they had these kids and after. So I think, they've learned so much and they've grown from the experience and they can't imagine life without them. So that was my interview. So
Awesome. Krista, did you have any comments or things? I guess something that I thought was interesting, I guess with that last question, Mackenzie, when you were talking, um, And you said mentioned that the person that you interviewed that had she had Down syndrome, they didn't find out till she was about 1 or 2. Is that right?
They didn't have Down syndrome, they had autism.
Or autism?
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of thought it was interesting. So with that last question, do you get a sense that the parents were uncomfortable or had a sense of denial, shame, embarrassment? If it were, if it's me and I'm thinking about my kids, and the hardest thing if I had a child that I knew had something, autism, Down syndrome, or something that was, a special need in that case, I don't know if I would feel so much as far as maybe a sense of denial or shame, but I think the biggest thing for me would be um, like that people are understanding in a sense, or that people are accepting of it. I think that would be my biggest that would be my biggest fear. I think if once I've had two, and this week I'll have our third child. I think so after having two kids already, there's nothing that really changes your feelings toward your kids. Um,
Yeah.
whether my son speaks a little later or not later, or he's you know this that way. I think the love is always there, but I think the biggest concern for me for my kids now too is I hope they're accepted. I hope that they are accepted, have friends, and that people are understanding of my kids, or even if they have special needs kind of thing. That would be my concern. And I always you always see like videos of people. I've seen some with like YouTube videos where they've put a child with autism or something on a basketball team, and they put them into a basketball game, and the whole school is cheering for the kid, right? And I would think as myself, or as a parent, like how happy that would make you feel that a community, a school, people would be so willing to accept your child, just as it's normal. Because as a parent, I think you would feel that same way. There's nothing really different about my child. A little bit different as far as mentally, but it would be sad, that if your kids grew up in a school that just kind of pushed them to the side and didn't really befriend them or things like that. And so I think that would be my concern, I guess my worry as a parent for my kids now, and if I had kids with special needs, I think that would be my worry, is just to hope that they'd be kind of accepted regardless. I think so.
Yeah, I think to kind of go along with that, I think that would be my, biggest fear is just, you don't know what they're going to be treated like at school because you're not there. But I think, outside of the LDS, gospel, I think, a lot of people find out that their kid, is special needs, like say, they have an ultrasound and you find out that you can't find that out pretty early if they have some and they tend to report them because I think that they're scared and they don't want the responsibility of raising a special needs child. And I think, the gospel it's nice because we know that someone with special needs they go straight to the celestial kingdom, and I think that's why there are a lot of special needs kids who are Mormon because we know that they go straight to the celestial kingdom. And I think people are scared because they don't want to have that responsibility or have that knowledge that they brought, this child into the world with this, hardship. But I think it's not necessarily a hardship. I think it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. But I think it's interesting to see the differences between raising special needs kids and having them in, the world.
Sorry, I kind of had a little trouble hearing you a little bit. Sometimes your microphone was going in and out a little bit, but that's why I muted my microphone. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that is just kind of uh, for me, a worry as far as kids. But Carissa, did you have any comments or anything that was kind of stood out to you, or anything that you wanted to talk about that was interesting to you?
Yeah, like just with the question, that last question, like the shame and embarrassment, like I don't think, I mean, like I'm not married, I don't have kids or anything, but like it would be hard to imagine that a parent would have like that shame and embarrassment. And I don't think that really many parents do, but more like just like the denial. Like I am in like a special education class right now, where we just like talk about like all the different disabilities, and um, lots of times I think like parents like have a hard time when like their child is older and they find out that they have like a learning disability or something like that. Then it's like a little bit more hard. Like, they're like, no, like they're fine, but like that's when I feel like that denial comes in. Instead of like when they're young and you like can see that difference, where if like the disability is like they're born with it or something like that, then there is like that obvious difference where like they're not speaking at the right time or something like that. And so that's kind of just what came to my mind. But yeah.
There was a lady in our ward that just had a baby just a couple of weeks ago, and I don't remember if, and I guess they had just found out like yesterday or 2 days ago that the child, I don't remember if they said it was had Down syndrome or autism or what the thing was, but I guess to me, I mean, I've never really thought about it before, but I've always thought like I thought that there was a way to kind of to catch it before that a child's born, and so that would be a worry for me too as a parent is as that I think if I were to, it would be easier to deal with it if like you could prepare yourself, kind of like, yeah, your child's going to be different when your child comes, and or as far as Down syndrome or autistic, and then you can kind of prepare yourself a little bit. Okay, these are what we're going to do. These are kind of some experiences that we'll have. Reading material, you can kind of catch up to it. But as far as a child comes and then not being able to kind of prepare yourself for it, 1 or 2 years down the line, I think it would kind of be a little bit more difficult as far as like being able to accept it or to realize that there's something a little bit different as far as development. So that would be kind of something too for me, I guess, as far as shame or denial, I guess, in that sense, having to it kind of be sprung on you. You take your child to a doctor, and then they say, well, how come this wasn't caught earlier? How come we didn't notice this earlier? I guess that would be kind of my thing. So, um, other than that, I don't know if I don't have any other questions or comments about um, anyone's interviews or anything. I thought it was good. It was a good activity. I learned a lot, and I think the biggest thing to me was that um, the purpose of concept 6. I'm just going to read it real quick. It says that I had it here somewhere. Let me just look. Yeah, the broad range of individual differences among young children often make it difficult to distinguish normal variations in maturational delays from transient disorders and persistent impairments. Um, I thought there was another place that kind of that I had read somewhere else that it talked about the concept number 6 that said it was the purpose of this week's is kind of desensitize or what normal is, and I think that it did that for me. I was able to see that each child is different. They'll experience different growth, social, emotional, speech, all these different things. They'll be impacted with a lot different, and I think that this week for me it did do that for me as far as um, what is normal, and I don't know if it's not easy to define normal. There's not this specific thing that says this is what normal is, and so I kind of thought that this week's interviews and activities and material kind of did that for me, helped me out. So I don't know if you guys had any other comments or questions before. Mackenzie, you just want to just do a quick little summary of what we talked about, and then we can probably finish up.
Yeah, I'll just say like just about like the normal, um, like one thought that has come to my mind is just like that not only like the kids kind of develop differently, but they also grow up in like different environments. Like I don't know, like there's just so many, like with my mom being a kindergarten teacher, like I like go into the classrooms and there's just like you can tell like the kids that come from good homes that their parents are like there to read with them and like just different things, like they're obviously going to excel more than those that like go home and they're or like that go to a daycare or something like that that their parents have to work. And not necessarily that that's bad, but there's just different environments that and our environment like really affects us, just like we've talked about like in previous chapters. But that's just something that I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a preschool teacher myself, and I mean, I see every day, I have the same kids, but, you know, um, they all come from different families. They all come from, some of them are here every day, and their parents work from 7:30 to 5:30, and some of them are only there for 2 days. So, I mean, it just depends, but they all come from different families, and, um, you know, they grow up differently. So I think they grow up differently, they develop differently. But yeah.
Awesome. Other than that, I think we're good. Mackenzie, you just want to do? I think Mackenzie, did you say you would do the summarization?
Sure. I don't really know how you want me to summarize it,
I
but
don't know. It just says summarize. I don't know.
okay. Well,
We talked about.
I feel like, I mean, the general thing I think we talked about the most was the normalcy and how we think kids, what's the sense of normal. And I think we all kind of came up with the sense that there's not really necessarily a normal. I think we decided that every kid's different, and since they grow up differently, there's not really a normal. I think once we talked about that, there's the average, but you know I think people think that there's the normal just because, I mean, people are different. I know that when there's someone with special needs, people think that they're not normal. Not necessarily that they're not normal. I just feel um, they just develop differently than others. Some people develop a lot faster, and some people develop a lot slower. So there's not really a sense of normal. Um, I think we talked a lot about, that last question. Did you get a sense that the parents were uncomfortable or had a sense of denial? And I think, all of them individually all had their own kind of sense of, denial, not necessarily uncomfortable, but I think each parent kind of has their own denial if they have a special needs kid. I think that it's hard on them. It's not necessarily that they don't want it. It's just that it's a shock and it's something that came on them quick and had no clue was coming. So I think that's where the sense of denial comes in. Um, but I think I don't know. I don't know what else to say. But
I think that's good. Just give me 1 second here.